Notice this detail right here: no fear, no shame, just irritation. In court, demeanor matters. Judges read body language constantly, and this kind of entitlement? It sets the tone before a single word is spoken. When someone walks in acting above the process, courts tend to respond very differently.
The young woman who walked into my courtroom that Tuesday morning carried herself like royalty. Madison Cruz, 24 years old, daughter of one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Everything about her screamed wealth and privilege. The Chanel suit, the Cartier jewelry, the designer handbag that probably cost more than most people in that courtroom earned in 6 months. But it was her expression that caught my attention. Not nervousness, not remorse, annoyance, pure, undisguised annoyance that she had to be here at all.
And this is where cases are won or lost. Witnesses can forget, stories can change, but video doesn't blink. Once footage exists, especially from multiple angles, the courtroom shifts from what happened to how accountable will you be?
Behind her came 2 attorneys, Marcus Feldman, who charged $850 an hour, and his associate, carrying enough legal files to build a small wall. But sitting in the front row of the gallery, looking small and frightened, was someone else entirely. Sarah Mitchell, 52 years old, wearing her work uniform from Anteneelli's Italian restaurant. Her left arm was in a sling. Her face still showed fading bruises around her eye and cheek. She was the reason we were here. The citation read assault and battery. The details made my blood pressure rise even before the hearing started. Madison Cruz had been dining at Anteneelli's, one of Providence's nicest restaurants, 3 weeks ago. When her appetizer arrived and she deemed it too cold, she didn't send it back politely. She didn't ask to speak to a manager. She picked up the plate and threw it directly at Sarah Mitchell's face. The ceramic plate shattered against Sarah's cheekbone. Then, according to 3 separate witness statements, Madison stood up and shoved Sarah so hard that the 52-year-old woman fell backward, landing on her arm. The impact fractured her wrist and gave her a concussion. Security footage captured every...
That phrase, "these people," is explosive in a courtroom. It signals bias, dehumanization, and lack of remorse. Judges take this personally, because the justice system exists to protect the very people being dismissed here.
Everything. And yet, Madison Cruz stood in my courtroom looking like this was all a massive inconvenience. Miss Cruz, I began, keeping my voice measured. You're charged with assault and battery against Sarah Mitchell, a server at Anteneelli's restaurant. How do you plead? Her attorney stood immediately. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. We believe this incident has been grossly exaggerated. And I raised my hand. Counselor, I asked your client. Miss Cruz, do you have a voice? Madison looked at me with barely concealed contempt. Not guilty, Your Honor. This whole thing is ridiculous. The woman is obviously trying to get money from my family. The words hung in the air. Sarah Mitchell, sitting in the gallery, with her arm in a sling and bruises on her face, flinched like she'd been slapped again. Miss Cruz, I said quietly, before we go further, let me make sure I understand. You're saying that Mrs. Mitchell, a woman who's worked at Anteneelli's for 18 years with no prior complaints, somehow injured herself and is blaming you to extort money from your father. That's exactly what I'm saying. These people, they see a famous name and they see dollar signs. It's pathetic. These people, she said it with such casual dismissal, like Sarah Mitchell wasn't a human being, just an obstacle.
This silence isn't awkward, it's devastating. Every judge knows this moment. The evidence has spoken, and now the defendant has only 2 options: accountability or digging the hole deeper.
An inconvenience, a person beneath her consideration. Your Honor, the prosecutor, Jennifer Chen, stood. May I present evidence? Please do. She walked to the evidence table and picked up a tablet. Your Honor, we have security camera footage from 4 different angles inside Anteneelli's restaurant. The video is clear, high definition, and captures the entire incident. May I play it? Proceed. The bailiff dimmed the lights, and the monitor came to life. The footage showed Madison Cruz sitting at a corner table alone, scrolling through her phone. A server, Sarah Mitchell, approached with a plate, set it down politely, said something we couldn't hear. Madison picked up her fork, took one bite, then immediately set it down. She said something to Sarah. Sarah nodded, reached for the plate, clearly offering to take it back to the kitchen. That's when it happened. Madison grabbed the plate before Sarah could take it and threw it directly at Sarah's face. The ceramic exploded on impact. Sarah stumbled backward, her hand going to her face. Then Madison stood up, walked around the table, and with both hands shoved Sarah hard in the chest. Sarah fell backward, her arm extending to break her fall. You could see the moment of impact, see her face contort in pain. Madison stood over her for a moment, said something, then grabbed her purse and walked out. Other diners rushed to help Sarah. The manager came running. The entire incident, from throwing the plate to Madison's exit, took less than 2 minutes. When the lights came back on,
This is the emotional turning point of the entire case. Courts aren't just about statutes, they're about perspective. When privilege tries to equate itself with survival, judges tend to draw a very hard line.
the courtroom was silent. I looked at Madison. Her jaw was tight, but she still didn't look remorseful. She looked angry at being caught. "Miss Cruz," I said, "you just watched the same video we all watched. Do you still maintain that Mrs. Mitchell injured herself?" Her attorney whispered urgently in her ear. She shook him off. "The food was cold, Your Honor, unacceptably cold. I'm paying premium prices at that restaurant. I expect premium service. She was incompetent." So you threw a ceramic plate at her face. I was frustrated. She should have checked the temperature before bringing it out. And then you shoved her to the ground. She was hovering. I wanted her to back away. No remorse, no acknowledgement that throwing dishes and shoving a 52-year-old woman might be wrong. Just justification and entitlement. I turned to Sarah Mitchell. "Mrs. Mitchell, would you approach the bench, please?" She stood slowly, her movements careful, still in pain. When she reached the front, I could see the bruising more clearly, the yellowing around her eye, the cut on her cheekbone that was still healing. "Mrs. Mitchell, tell me what happened that night, in your own words." Her voice was quiet but steady. "Your Honor, I've been a server at Anteneelli's for 18 years. I've served thousands of people. I've dealt with complaints, with difficult customers, with people who sent food back. It's part of the job. I understand that." She paused, gathering herself. "That night, I brought Miss Cruz her appetizer, bruschetta. I checked it myself before bringing it out because I always try to make sure everything is perfect. It was warm, the way it's supposed to be. She took one bite and immediately said it was ice cold and inedible. I apologized, even though I knew it wasn't cold. I reached to take the plate back to the kitchen. That's when she threw it at my face. Sarah's hand unconsciously went to her cheek. The plate hit me so hard I saw stars. Pieces of ceramic cut my face. I stumbled back trying to process what had just happened. Then she stood up and shoved me. I'm 52 years old, Your Honor. I'm not a young woman anymore. When she pushed me, I couldn't catch myself. I fell straight back. I put my arm out, and I felt something snap. The pain was immediate and severe. Tears filled her eyes, but she kept talking. I lay there on the floor of the restaurant where I'd worked for 18 years, bleeding, in pain, humiliated, and she stood over me and said, "Maybe next time you'll do your job properly." Then she walked out. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just left. Sarah wiped her eyes. I spent 6 hours in the emergency room. My wrist was fractured. I had a concussion. The cuts on my face needed 7 stitches. I couldn't work for 3 weeks. I lost 3 weeks of wages because I couldn't carry trays with my arm in a cast. I'm a single mother, Your Honor. I have 2 kids in college. I work full-time at Anteneelli's and part-time at a coffee shop on weekends. Those 3 weeks of lost income, that was $2,400 I didn't have. I had to borrow money from my sister to pay my rent. She looked directly at Madison. I'm not trying to get money from your family. I'm trying to get justice for what you did to me. You hurt me, humiliated me, and cost me wages I desperately needed. And you did it because you thought a piece of bread wasn't warm enough. I'm not these people. I'm a human being who deserves respect. I'm a mother working 2 jobs to put my kids through college. I'm a person who shows up every day and does her best, and I didn't deserve what you did to me. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Sarah returned to her seat, and I could see several people in the gallery wiping their eyes. I looked at Madison Cruz. Miss Cruz, you heard Mrs. Mitchell's testimony. Do you have anything to say? She looked at her attorney, who shook his head slightly, but Madison's ego wouldn't let her stay quiet. Your Honor, I'm sure from her perspective it seems bad, but she doesn't understand the pressure I'm under. Do you know what it's like being Tom Cruz's daughter? Everyone expects perfection from me. Everything I do is scrutinized. I have to maintain certain standards. When I go to a nice restaurant, I expect excellence. If I don't demand it, I won't get it. I set down my pen very carefully. Miss Cruz, did you just compare the pressure of being a celebrity's daughter?
This sentence isn't about revenge, it's about recalibration. Jail time here sends a message courts rarely say out loud. Fame doesn't soften consequences, and money doesn't erase harm.
To the pressure of being a single mother working 2 jobs. That's not what I meant. I'm just saying my life isn't easy either. Your life isn't easy, I repeated. Mrs. Mitchell works 65 hours a week between 2 jobs to put her children through college. She lives paycheck to paycheck. She can't afford to miss work because a fractured wrist means no income. You just described going to one of Providence's nicest restaurants, where the average meal costs $80 per person, and being upset about the temperature of an appetizer. Do you see the difference? Madison's face flushed. Your Honor, my father is Tom Cruz. We have a certain standard we're expected to maintain. Miss Cruz, I don't care if your father is Tom Cruise, the Pope, or the President of the United States. In this courtroom, you're judged by your actions, not your father's fame. And your actions were violent, cruel, and completely unjustified. I picked up the medical report. Mrs. Mitchell sustained a fractured wrist, a concussion, facial lacerations requiring 7 stitches, and severe bruising. Her medical bills totaled $4,200. She lost 3 weeks of wages, approximately $2,400. She couldn't lift her youngest daughter, who has cerebral palsy, for 6 weeks because of the wrist fracture. She had to ask neighbors for help with groceries, with basic tasks that require 2 hands, all because you threw a plate at her face and shoved her to the ground over an appetizer you deemed too cold. I leaned forward. But here's what troubles me most, Miss Cruz. You don't think you did anything wrong. You're not here to take responsibility. You're here because you got caught on camera and couldn't make it go away. You think being Tom Cruise's daughter entitles you to treat people like Mrs. Mitchell as less than human. You think your frustration, your standards, your pressure somehow justifies violence against a working woman just trying to make a living. Madison started to respond, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished. Your attorney is going to tell you to stay quiet, but I want you to understand something. Mrs. Mitchell has more dignity in her broken wrist than you've shown in this entire proceeding. She came here not for money, but for justice. She came here to stand up and say that no one, not even a Hollywood princess, has the right to assault her and walk away. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming. The video clearly shows unprovoked assault. We have medical records, witness statements, and the defendant's own admission that she threw the point and pushed Mrs. Mitchell. The state requests the maximum penalty under law. Marcus Feldman jumped up. Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender. She's young. She made a mistake in a moment of frustration. Her father is willing to compensate Mrs. Mitchell generously for her medical expenses and lost wages. We request probation and community service. Compensate generously, I repeated? So your solution is to throw money at the problem to buy Mrs. Mitchell's silence and dignity. Your Honor, my client is willing to make this right financially. Counselor, sit down. I stood up. When I stand during a hearing, everyone in my courtroom knows something significant is about to happen. I came down from the bench and walked toward Madison Cruz. She looked uncertain for the first time since entering my courtroom. Miss Cruz, your attorney wants to pay Mrs. Mitchell off. Your father's money can certainly do that. But let me tell you what money can't buy. It can't buy back the 3 weeks Mrs. Mitchell couldn't hug her disabled daughter. It can't buy back the humiliation she felt lying on that restaurant floor while customers stared. It can't buy back her sense of safety doing a job she's done with pride for 18 years. And it certainly can't buy you character, compassion, or basic human decency. I walked to where Sarah Mitchell sat. Mrs. Mitchell, stand up, please. She stood, her injured arm still in the sling. Miss Cruz, come here. Madison looked at her attorney, who nodded reluctantly. She walked over, her designer heels clicking on the courtroom floor. I positioned them face to face, 3 feet apart. Miss Cruz, look at Mrs. Mitchell. Really, look at her. Madison glanced at Sarah, then away. No, look at her. Look at what you did. Madison's eyes met Sarah's. Mrs. Mitchell is 52 years old. She's worked since she was 16. She raised 2 children as a single mother after her husband died of cancer when her kids were 8 and 10. She's worked as a server for 18 years, never missing a shift unless she was physically unable to be there. She smiles at customers, even on days when her feet hurt and her back aches. She remembers regulars' favorite dishes and asks about their families. She does her job with pride and dignity. I paused. You saw none of that. You saw a servant who displeased you, someone beneath your consideration, someone whose pain doesn't matter because she's not famous, not wealthy, not important in your world. I turned to face Madison directly. Here's my finding. You are guilty of assault and battery. The evidence is overwhelming and irrefutable. Your assault on Mrs. Mitchell was unprovoked, violent, and caused significant injury and financial harm. Here is your sentence. The courtroom went silent. You will serve 90 days in the adult correctional institutions, not suspended, not probationed, 90 days of actual incarceration. You will serve those days consecutively, beginning immediately after this hearing. Madison's face went white. Her attorney shot to his feet. Your Honor, 90 days of actual jail time for a first offense is extremely harsh. This is Counselor. I'm not finished. In addition to the 90 days, you will pay full restitution to Mrs. Mitchell, medical expenses of $4,200, lost wages of $2,400, and pain and suffering compensation of $25,000. Total, $31,600. Furthermore, you will complete 500 hours of community service after your release, not at a celebrity charity gala. You will serve those hours working in the kitchen at a community dining hall, serving meals to homeless individuals and working families. You will wash dishes, prep food, and clean floors. You will do the kind of work that people like Mrs. Mitchell do every day, and you will learn what it takes to serve others with dignity. Madison found her voice. Your Honor, my father will appeal this. He'll have the best attorneys money can buy. This won't stand. I walked back to the bench and sat down. Miss Cruz, your father can't appeal. That's his right. But let me tell you what will happen. The appeals court will see the security footage. They'll read Mrs. Mitchell's medical records. They'll review the witness statements. And they'll see a privileged young woman who committed assault and showed no remorse. If anything, they might increase the sentence. I leaned forward. But I'll tell you something else. I'm about to do something I rarely do. I'm going to call your father. Tom Cruz has built a reputation over 40 years in Hollywood. He's known for being professional, hard-working, respectful to crew members and staff. He's known for doing his own stunts because he doesn't want to ask others to do what he won't do himself. I'm going to tell him what his daughter did. I'm going to tell him how she treated Mrs. Mitchell. And I'm going to ask him one question. Madison's confidence cracked completely. What question? I'm going to ask him if this is who he raised. If the values he tried to instill in you included throwing plates at servers' faces and shoving working mothers to the ground. Because I don't think it is. I think your father would be ashamed of what you did. For the first time, I saw actual fear in Madison's eyes. Not fear of jail, but fear of her father's disappointment. Your Honor, please don't call him. He doesn't need to know about this. Oh, but he does. Because part of accountability is facing not just legal consequences, but the disappointment of people whose respect you value. Your father built his reputation on hard work and treating people with respect. You've damaged that reputation with your cruelty. I picked up my gavel. Miss Cruz, you're remanded into custody immediately. Bailiff, please escort her to holding. Officer D'Angelo approached. Madison looked at her attorney desperately. Do something. Call my father. Get me out of this. Marcus Feldman looked defeated. Madison, I'll file the appeal paperwork, but the judge is right. The evidence is overwhelming. Your best option is to serve the time and hope for early release with good behavior. As the bailiff led Madison toward the door, she passed Mrs. Mitchell. Sarah stood up, and I thought she might say something harsh, something about justice being served. Instead, she said quietly, I forgive you. I hope you learn from this. I really do. Madison stopped, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. You weren't thinking. You were reacting from a place of entitlement. But you're young. You can change. I hope you do. The bailiff continued escorting Madison out. The courtroom remained silent as the door closed behind them. I turned to Sarah Mitchell. Mrs. Mitchell, this court owes you an apology. You came here seeking justice, and I'm sorry it took assault and injury for the system to protect you. No one should have to endure what you endured. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for seeing me, for treating me like I mattered. You do matter, Mrs. Mitchell. You've always mattered. I looked at the gallery. Let me say something to everyone here. We live in a world where celebrity and wealth often shield people from consequences, where famous names open doors and make problems disappear, where working people like Mrs. Mitchell are expected to smile and accept abuse because the customer is always right. I paused, making sure everyone was listening. But not in this courtroom. In here, a server's dignity matters as much as a celebrity's convenience. In here, Sarah Mitchell's broken wrist weighs more heavily than Madison Cruz's famous last name. In here, everyone is equal under the law. That's not a slogan. That's a promise. I stood up. If Tom Cruz's daughter can go to jail for assaulting a server, then anyone can be held accountable. That's the message I'm sending today. Wealth, fame, connections, none of it protects you from consequences when you harm another human being. The courtroom erupted in applause. People were standing, clapping, some crying. Sarah Mitchell stood there overwhelmed, finally receiving the validation she deserved. 4 hours after the hearing, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a Los Angeles area code. Judge Caprio, this is Tom Cruz. His voice was instantly recognizable. Mr. Cruz, thank you for calling back. Judge, I just heard what happened. I just watched the security footage the prosecutor's office sent to my attorney. I need you to know something. That's not how I raised my daughter. Those aren't the values I try to instill. I'm horrified, embarrassed, and heartbroken. His voice was genuine, raw with emotion. Mr. Cruz, I appreciate you calling, but I need to ask you that question I mentioned in court. Is this who you raised? There was a long pause. No. God, no. I raised her to respect people, to understand that everyone has value, regardless of their job or status. I've made it a point in my career to learn the names of every crew member, every assistant, every person on set. I taught Madison those same values, or I tried to. What happened? I asked. Honestly, Judge, I think I protected her too much. When she got in trouble, I fixed it. When she faced consequences, I made them go away. I thought I was being a good father, protecting my child. But I realize now I was preventing her from learning accountability. I created this. He sighed. Judge Caprio, I'm not calling to ask you to reduce her sentence. I'm calling to ask you not to. Let her serve the full 90 days. Let her do the community service. Let her learn what I failed to teach her, that actions have consequences and that every person deserves respect and dignity. I was surprised. Mr. Cruz, most parents in your position would be calling their attorneys, threatening appeals, trying to get their daughter out. Most parents in my position are making the same mistake I made, protecting their children from consequences until they become adults who think they're above the law. I won't make that mistake again. Madison needs to face this. She needs to understand that her actions hurt a real person, a mother, a hard worker, someone who deserves better than what Madison gave her. He paused. Is Mrs. Mitchell okay? I'd like to speak with her if she's willing, not to make excuses for Madison, but to apologize personally and to make sure she's taken care of, not as a payoff, but because it's the right thing to do. I'll ask her, Mr. Cruz, but I think she'd appreciate hearing from you. One more thing, Judge. When Madison gets out, I'm going to make sure she continues working with service workers, not for community service credit, but because she needs to understand what real work looks like, what dignity and labor means, what it takes to serve others with grace, even when you're tired and your feet hurt and customers are difficult. That sounds like good parenting, Mr. Cruz. It's overdue parenting, Judge. Thank you for doing what I should have done years ago. Thank you for holding her accountable. 6 weeks into Madison's sentence, I received a letter. Dear Judge Caprio, I am writing this from my cell at the ACI. I have a cellmate who's here for stealing food to feed her kids. Another woman down the hall was here because she couldn't pay court fees from a traffic ticket that spiraled into a warrant. I'm surrounded by women whose crimes were born of desperation, poverty, or circumstances I never had to face. And I'm here because I threw a plate at a woman's face over lukewarm bread. The contrast is not lost on me. For the first 24 years of my life, I believed I was special, that my father's fame made me different, better somehow, that normal rules didn't fully apply to me, that people who served me were less important than people who ran in my social circles. I was wrong about everything. My cellmate Maria worked 3 jobs before she got arrested. She tells me about her kids every night, how smart they are, how she was trying to save for their school supplies, when she got desperate and stole food. She has more dignity, more strength, more character than I've ever had. I threw a plate at Sarah Mitchell because I was annoyed. Maria stole bread because her children were hungry. And somehow we're in the same place, serving the same time. But we're not the same. She's a good person who made a desperate choice. I'm a spoiled person who made a cruel choice. I think about Mrs. Mitchell every day. I think about her arm in that sling, the bruises on her face, the fear in her eyes when that plate hit her. I think about her lying on that restaurant floor in front of all those people. I think about her kids and how she couldn't hug one of them for weeks because of what I did. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Not because I got caught, not because I'm in jail, but because I finally understand what I did. I hurt a human being who was just trying to do her job. I hurt a mother who was working to support her family. I hurt someone who deserved kindness, and I gave her violence. I called my father last week. He visited yesterday. I apologized to him for embarrassing him, for betraying the values he tried to teach me. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Madison, I'm not embarrassed because you damaged my reputation. I'm heartbroken because you damaged someone who didn't deserve it." Mrs. Mitchell is the victim here, not me. He was right. When I get out, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. I'm going to complete my community service not as a punishment, but as an education. I'm going to learn what it means to serve others, and I'm going to dedicate myself to helping people like Mrs. Mitchell, working people who deserve respect and support. Thank you, Judge Caprio, for giving me consequences I actually had to face. Thank you for not letting my father's fame protect me. Thank you for seeing Mrs. Mitchell's humanity and defending it. You didn't just sentence me. You saved me from becoming an even worse person than I already was. Respectfully, Madison Cruz. I kept that letter, not because it excused what she did, but because it showed that sometimes accountability leads to genuine change. 3 months after Madison's release, Sarah Mitchell called me. "Judge Caprio, I wanted you to know something. Madison Cruz came to see me at the restaurant. She asked if we could talk. I almost said no, but something made me agree." "What happened?" "She apologized. Really apologized. She told me she thought about what she did every single day in jail. She asked if there was any way she could make it right beyond the restitution you ordered. I told her the best thing she could do was become someone different than who she was that night." Sarah paused. "Judge, she's been volunteering at the community kitchen where she did her service hours. She's there 3 times a week on her own time. She washes dishes, serves food, talks to people. Last week, she stopped a young woman from being disrespectful to one of the other servers. She told this girl, 'These people are working hard to feed us. Show them respect.' I started crying when I heard that. Mrs. Mitchell, that's remarkable." Judge Caprio, I'm not saying she's perfect now. I'm not saying I've forgotten what she did. But I see someone trying to change, and maybe that's all we can ask for. You gave her consequences. She's giving herself a conscience. Together, maybe that's justice. Sarah continued, and Judge, Tom Cruz came to the restaurant 2 weeks ago. Not the publicity, just quietly. He ate dinner, left a $500 tip, and told our manager he wanted to establish a fund for servers who were assaulted or injured on the job. He called it the Sarah Mitchell Service Workers Protection Fund. He donated $100,000 to start it. I felt emotion rise in my throat. That's wonderful, Mrs. Mitchell. Judge, you changed more than Madison that day in your courtroom. You changed how her father parents. You changed how I see justice, and you reminded everyone watching that working people matter, that we deserve protection and respect, that our dignity isn't for sale, and our pain isn't negotiable. This case reminded me why I became a judge. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about transformation. It's about ensuring that when someone harms another person, they face real consequences. But it's also about giving people the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and become better human beings. Madison Cruz learned that lesson. Sarah Mitchell found justice. And perhaps most importantly, Tom Cruz learned that protecting your children from consequences doesn't prepare them for the real world. Sometimes the most important thing a judge can do is help people understand that every human being deserves respect and dignity, regardless of their job, their social status, or the circumstances that brought them into our courtroom. Court adjourned.